Todd. I wanted to talk to you guys today. We're going to talk about finances. And I know a lot of times this isn't really a fun topic to talk about, but it is really, really important to talk about just basically having a basic knowledge of your business and how much money you're making in your business, what your expenses are, all that kind of stuff. That is super important because there's so many ladies who get to the end of their first year in Premier and they don't know how to handle their taxes, or they don't know how much money they made, and they go, oh, well, I don't really know if it's worth it because I have no idea where my money went. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Not a whole lot of fun, right? But this is a super important topic that can really just make or break your business, okay? So we're going to talk about the very first thing is when you are at a jewelry show and you're wrapping up, you've filled out the customer order forms and all of that, which your jewelry mama will go over that with you, how to fill out those order forms. You've collected orders, maybe online or pre-orders from the hostess. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to fill out this form with her. It's called the Closing Out Your Show form. This is something that you always want to fill out with your hostess. You want to leave it with her after you're done with her event, okay? And what this is going to do is this is going to tell her exactly how much free jewelry that she earned, okay? So at the top, you're going to enter in your show sales, okay? Now that is without tax or shipping, because that is what Premier bases her free jewelry off of, is just the actual customer retail total. You don't include tax or shipping in that total, okay? And then you're going to multiply that by 30%, okay, or 0.3, and that's going to give you how much free jewelry she has earned, okay? Then underneath that, you're also going to tell her how many half-price items she earned. So depending on where her show falls, you'll see on here the bracket of those customer retail sales is going to determine whether or not she gets 4, 6, or 8 items at half price. So this you just get to leave with her so that she knows how much she's earned, and that'll give her an idea when she's starting to fill out her wish list, okay? Then in the middle box it says we will close your show on blank, okay? And I usually give my hostesses about a 2-day window to finish collecting any orders. Maybe you're going to post something on a Facebook event or something like that just to try to collect some additional orders. It also gives her time to finalize her wish list based on the amount of free that she's getting. Okay, and then on there it also helps remind her that as the hostess, she's going to pay that $5 flat shipping fee plus she's going to pay the tax on all her free and half-price jewelry. So that's a great reminder when you're sitting there with her, is you can just remind her, okay, if you pick out any half-price pieces, you're going to pay half of that. You're going to pay tax on the half, tax on any free, and the flat $5 shipping fee. Okay, so that just helps you remind her. Okay, and then there's a section where it's just don't forget to follow up on. So this is just where you're going to tell her things to remember. You know, if there was someone, maybe she had a friend that couldn't make it that said that they wanted to schedule a service or a jewelry event with you or something like that. That's going to help you both to know what you need to follow up on before you close out the show. And then a really cool part down at the bottom is, did you know I get paid to sparkle? So what this is it says if you were the jeweler tonight, you would have made blank, okay? And that's where I'm going to put my 50% profit in that spot. And then usually jewelry events, depending on what you're doing, on average take about 4 hours, including travel time, that kind of thing. So some might take less, some might take more, but just on average, you can kind of break it down to her as an hourly rate. And I go over that with her because a lot of times, even if ladies have heard the business ahead of time, once they see that and they say, oh wow, she made like $250 tonight, I can do this. I could get, paid to hang out with cool ladies and eat brownies, okay? So that's really important too. It gives me another opportunity to go over the business with her, okay? So I always leave this with her. I tell her that I'm going to follow up with her in about 2 days. And then this is really important. Once you fill that out, 2 days later, I'm going to give her a call, just touch base with her if she hasn't gotten back to me already. And I'm going to make sure I've got all those orders, enter everything, and submit it. Okay, now here's the important part, okay? With each month, sometimes Premier might offer hostess promotions or customer promotions or things like that, okay? If they do, it is super important, number one, that you know the details of that promotion, okay? If there's maybe a double double bonus promotion or something like that, or just a bonus, or maybe there's a spend $75, get an item for $10 customer promotion. Okay, some of those promotions might charge you an additional jeweler share fee, okay, an additional little fee. You just need to make sure that you know the details of those promotions. You need to know when the promotions end, because what's super important is if, let's say, there's a promotion going on in September that ends on the last day of September. If you enter that show and submit it to Premier on October 1st, then you're no longer going to get that promotion. So a good rule of thumb is really just to always, whatever month you hold that show, you want to get it submitted in that same month. So let's say you're holding a show on August 30th, you need to make sure that by August 31st that you've told that hostess ahead of time, I'm going to need your wish list. We're going to have to get this submitted quickly and get it in by the end of the month. Okay, it also helps you with just accounting purposes, record keeping, and things like that. Okay, now for your very first jewelry event, you are going to meet with your mom to close, your Premier mom, your jewelry mama, to close out your show. Okay, so she's going to help you with that. She's going to go over this sheet with you. She's going to talk about your free jewelry. She's going to talk about your profit and things like that. Okay, a couple things, just kind of some pointers to help you when you are entering the hostess's jewelry to figure out the best deal to get her the most for free. Because remember, with her half-price items, if she decides to do half-price items, she also gets 30% of whatever she pays at half price added back into her free jewelry total. So you can totally figure that out, paper and pencil if you want to. But here's a couple tips that I would recommend. Number one is Hood & House. It's a great software program. There is a little hostess magic button calculator that you can enter in the total retail sales from the show and enter in the hostess's wish list items, and it's going to calculate what to put on half price and what to put on free to give her the most bang for her buck. Okay, another one there, if you're not ready to invest in the Hood & House software, which I highly recommend, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, is there's also called, I believe it's a show closer or closing out your show app. Okay, it's just something on your phone. It's literally just that little magic hostess calculator that'll calculate the best deal for your hostess based on what she's earned and what she wants. Okay, does that make sense? So, and your jewelry mama can go over that with you as well and show you those two options. Okay, something else that I want to point out is if you are shipping your order, okay, you want to make sure, remember, if it's $5 shipping if everything comes to the hostess, okay, and if it is an order that a customer has chosen to be shipped directly to her, it's going to be $7 for shipping for her, and the customer pays that additional fee. Okay, the other thing you want to be sure of is there are additional shipping options if you need it 2-day or if you need it overnight or things like that. Just make sure that you really know when your hostess needs that jewelry. Maybe there's a customer who wanted the jewelry for a wedding or something like that. So that's something that I just make sure, and I do cover that cost if I have to pay extra shipping just to make sure that I get that jewelry there on time. But you can find that information about the different shipping rates and how that works. Just keep in mind that Premier processes all of the orders in the order in which the company receives them. So when they are submitted, it is a first in, first out in terms of being processed. So that extra shipping doesn't add on or doesn't take effect until the order is processed. So just because you select overnight shipping does not mean you're going to receive your package tomorrow, because it still goes in the order in which it's received to be processed. Okay? Okay, so something else that I want to show you guys is this, which is how I kind of keep track of life, okay? How I keep track of all of my expenses, my income, all of that good stuff. So the first thing I want to show you is this is that jewelry show at a glance form that you've also seen in the hostess coaching videos that we've had, different things like that. So at the top, when I schedule a show or an event or whatever it might be, a Facebook Live, whatever it might be, I go ahead and fill out the hostess's information at the top, or if I'm doing a personal event, I still fill one of these out for me. Okay, then there's a hostess checklist, so it's going to kind of give you a timeline to help you remember what you need to do. And then this is the middle section that I'm going to talk about. This is the jewelry show results. So when you submit that show, okay, there's several things that you're going to want to enter here, okay? I use Hood & House for my business, but I still enter this because I like to have just a quick reference that I can see, again, that jewelry show at a glance. Okay, so you're going to submit the home show retail total. So when you submit your show on the Premier's website, it's going to tell you what the retail total is. Okay, so I just basically take the information from the Premier website when I submit the show and I enter that here. Okay, you can mark down how much free jewelry the hostess received, what the CV is. Okay, so let me tell you, CV stands for commission volume. Okay, basically what that is the wholesale cost of the jewelry. Okay, so if I have a $50 piece, then the CV for that piece, if I sell it at the full retail value, then the CV for that piece is $25. Okay, now let's say I have a $50 piece of jewelry and I give her a discount and I sell it for $40. The CV of that piece is still $25. The CV does not change on the piece. That is basically the cost, the wholesale cost of the jewelry that you are going to pay Premier. Okay. All right, then you have jeweler fees. So for that, the fee, the $10 fee for that 30%, how much tax you paid to Premier, which basically that's all going to be collected from the customers and the hostess. Shipping, again, collected from the customers and the hostesses, just so you can kind of break those numbers down and know what the amount is that you're sending to Premier. The total collected, so that's going to be the retail of the jewelry, whatever you sold it at, plus shipping, plus tax, okay? That's going to be what you collected from your customers and your hostess, and then what you paid to Premier. Again, that is the CV, the commission volume of the cost of the jewelry. You're also going to be paying them all the shipping fees and the taxes and any of your like jeweler share fee, things like that, or if there's a fee for an extra promotion, okay? And then your profit earned. Now, one thing I like to point out, a lot of ladies will look at the retail total. Let's say I had a $500 jewelry show. That does not take into account the tax and the shipping. So don't make this mistake. Don't look at your retail total and subtract out what you paid to Premier, okay? Because that's going to give you a very skewed. That is not the amount that you made, okay? You are going to take the total that you collected from everyone minus what you paid Premier, and that will give you your profit that you earned, okay? Again, Hood & House is another great tool that will, spell all this out for you and create reports for you and things like that. And then I like to put credit card fees just so I know that's another expense that I have with that show and how much I paid in credit card fees for that particular event. And then, of course, my net profit. That is what I actually put into my bank account, okay? Down here at the bottom is just a place where you can take those guest surveys and you can fill in this information just for, again, a quick reference. Hood & House records all of this for you, so I generally don't fill this out because I use Hood & House, but if you don't have Hood & House, this is a great way to help you keep track of your customer care. Okay, so once I submit the show, I finish filling this out, and then I will show you what I do. I put it in a very nice big notebook, okay? It's a little giant 4-inch notebook. This is what I keep for the year, and I kind of separate it by each month, okay? So what I do is I take a sheet protector for each jewelry event or group order that I have a sheet protector. So you can see that very first, that first event that I had for this year in January. All right, so it was a personal jewelry show that I held, and I entered my information, and then behind that, I'm going to put several things. Okay, so I'll show you real quickly what that is. I have my jewelry show at a glance. Then I have my hostess receipt. Okay, this I printed out from the Premier website, or excuse me, this is my receipt this isn't my hostess receipt. This is the receipt that Premier gives you. When you submit your show, it'll say at a glance, and that's where I get these numbers, or you can click on a little box that says receipt or something like that. And so basically it's just the breakdown of the hostess jewelry, breaks down all the customer items. I just like keeping that because, again, it's going to give me all those numbers that I mentioned right there, okay? Then I have a hostess receipt. I happen to print this one from Hood & House. You can also use, your carbon copy hostess receipts. I keep all my customer order forms. I like to keep them. All right, and if I had to print some out, I can do that. And I also keep all of my customer surveys. okay? So that's everything basically that went along with that jewelry show, and I keep it in a little page protector, so if I need it for some reason, I can always go back and look at that and check it, and I usually keep these notebooks for a couple years for tax purposes, however long your accountant tells you that you need to keep records of things, and then maybe, you know, a few years later I'll go back and shred them if I don't need them anymore, but I definitely keep them for a few years, okay? So that's what I put in there. So it's all, every little sheet protector is another jewelry event, or if I just have an individual order, it might just be just a little separate sheet of paper if it's just one order from a customer or something like that. Okay. Also in my notebook, I also keep my expenses. There's two ways that you can do your receipts. First and foremost, the most important thing you need to do is keep your receipts and keep track of them. Okay. When you're first starting, if you just want to stick them all in a Ziploc bag to start with, that's fine, but you need to get that organized and get it organized quickly so that you're not having to go back at the end of the year when you're doing taxes and just dig through this giant box of receipts, okay, or that they get lost or whatever. So there's a couple other things that I do here that I print, and I'll show you real quickly. I print out a copy of my commission report. If you happen to have a team or a downline, I like to keep track of that so I know what my commission checks were for that month. So this is kind of all of my income, if that makes sense. So I put all my income first. I put copies of things like my replacement, orders in there as well, okay, or exchanges, whatever you want to call them. This was a receipt from a catalog purchase order that I did. So now I'm getting into kind of my expenses. And then what I put here, I also keep my bank statements in here so I can kind of go back and cross-reference that with my actual expenses from my debit card. And that, I want to point out, ladies, that is the number one thing that you need to do when you very first start your business before you do anything else with your finances is go open a separate checking account for your business. Okay, that way I know I use my debit card if I go to coffee with a hostess or I need to buy office supplies. I use that debit card because I know that is my premier money. It is separate from my family's income. So what I do at the end of the month after I reconcile everything is I give myself a paycheck and I transfer that money from my premier account into my family's personal account. But I keep my premier money separate from my family's income. Ladies, I can't stress how important that is. If you do not do that, you're going to get to the end of the year and you're going to have all kinds of expenses. You're going to have Walmart on there and you're not going to know if that was Premier or family. It's going to be very confusing and you're not going to have any idea what your profit was from the year. Okay, so it's super, super important that you do that. Okay, I put reports for my credit card for ProPay or Square or PayPal or whatever you use. I put that report in there so it shows me what my expenses are in terms of my credit card fees, my jewelry reward card statements, like I said, bank statements, and then in the very back I have one envelope that I have just a little random, sheet protector, that I have just random receipts that I had to do. Okay, and I like doing it this way because I enter my receipts in Hood and House. Okay, so Hood and House automatically is going to separate your receipts into different categories. Okay, so let me talk about that for just a minute. When I back up here in the front of my notebook, I have a couple things, one of which is a tax expense category that you're going to see on the documents for this video. When I'm entering my receipts in Hood and House, it's going to tell me, for example, jewelry that I purchased, my samples, your boutique when you first started, that's going to go under supplies on your Schedule C form that you have to fill out for your taxes. And we'll always talk about this. I'm not going to go into great detail on taxes, but you can contact me, you can contact your jewelry mama, your CPA, whoever it might be. They can help you with this. But if you don't use Hood and House, I would suggest instead of using these sheet protectors like this to put your receipts in, that you keep them in kind of an accordion folder, sorted and organized by these categories. Because then when you go back and you enter those categories and you need to say, okay, all these receipts were supplies, they go on line 22 of the Schedule C form. All these were travel expenses coming from my accordion folder, and these are going to go in line 24 of my Schedule C. for example, okay? So that is on there. That's a great reference to set up that accordion folder if you're not using Hood and House, okay? If you are using Hood and House, it's not as important that you keep them organized by categories. I just put mine in the back of, for my these are all my January receipts, okay? So literally all of my income and expenses are all in this one notebook. And depending on how your year goes, you might need 2 giant notebooks, and that's great, okay? So let's see, let's talk about a couple other things. Something else that I like to keep in the front of this notebook, and I'll hold it up here, is a little checklist, and it's closing out my shows and closing out my month. Okay, this is how I just keep myself organized. It just reminds me what I need to do at the end of the month to keep this little notebook here organized, so I'm not doing this at the end of the year. Okay, so you can kind of reference that, look through that. If you have questions about that, I'm not going to just sit here and read the whole thing to you, but just let us know. We can help you with that, okay? Let's see, mileage. Let's talk about mileage. Okay, so mileage is super important. If you're not tracking mileage, you are missing out on a huge income tax deduction, okay? There's a couple ways. I'm really bad, I'll be honest, about like paper and penciling my mileage. That you can do that. You can get yourself just a little notebook. Write down when you start Premier, you want to write down what your odometer says. So you have, 50,000 miles on your car at the beginning of the year or the beginning of when you start Premier. And then at the end of the year, December 31st, you're going to write down the ending mileage. Okay, so everything in between, you are going to write down where you were going. So maybe I'm going to Target and the bank. So I'm going to write down my starting mileage, the date, the starting and the ending mileage, and where I went, okay? And try to keep that as detailed as possible if you can. There is a great app out there. It is called Mile IQ. I love this app because it's literally working in the background of my phone, and it's recording my mileage, okay? It's telling me where I went. It's amazing because I don't have to remember to get in my car, write down my mileage, and then write it down at the end. So I highly recommend looking at that. You get 40 drives per month for free, okay, before you have to pay, I think it's like $5 or $6 or something if you want unlimited drives. Okay, so I highly recommend that. It's called Mile IQ. You can find it on your phone. Okay, let's see. There also is some Excel spreadsheets. If you don't have Hood and House, there's some Excel spreadsheets out there that will help you enter your expenses and things like that. Just to kind of wrap up this talk about finances, of course, if you have questions that I could talk for hours about how to really manage your money and things like that. But if you have difficulty with like a credit card, you have credit card debt, I recommend not using a credit card to pay for your shows, okay? So you might want to just use your debit card to pay for your shows. That way you know you deposited that money into your bank account and then you use that debit card to place your order for your jewelry with Premier. So just kind of a little tip to help you stay on top of that. And just in closing, a couple things. I think it is so important that if you are in this business and you're married, you have a spouse, or even if you're not, that you have somebody who's helping you keep you accountable with your business. If you're married or in a relationship, a serious long-term relationship, you're getting married, whatever it might be, it is really, really important that your husband is involved in especially this finance portion of your business, because you want him to see that, yes, I'm going out and doing these jewelry events and I am bringing home money. You want him to see that I went to this jewelry show and that paid for my kids' private school tuition, or it paid for our utility bill, or whatever, it paid for the groceries for the month, whatever it might be. You want him to see that, because if he doesn't see that money that you're bringing in and doesn't see the value, a lot of times husbands are very logical and they're not going to be on board with your business if they don't see that what you're doing is actually producing, okay? And one last point is 2 things you really want to save for in your business and plan for is rally. Okay, our rallies that we have one in, it's my little boy, we have one in January and we have one in July. Okay, you want to set aside some money from each of your shows to really plan for that and save, because those are crucial for your business. Okay, and the other one is your renewal. On your 1-year anniversary with Premier, you have a $350 renewal fee. This just allows you to have, obviously, your jewelry lady license or whatever you want to call it for another year of business. okay? And you really want to make sure that you're setting aside maybe even just $10, a couple dollars from each of your jewelry shows, so at the end of the year you either have that paid for or you have a really big chunk of that you've already paid for, so it makes it a lot easier. So just plan for those things and know that there are going to be some bigger expenses in your business, and you want to have those ready. So I just really encourage you to just give Premier a great fighting chance by keeping up with this stuff, keeping it organized. If you have questions, feel free to contact me and I can help you. And that's it, ladies. Good luck, and we love you.